Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Vintage Children's Book Vault. Today, I'm introducing you to a book called Mama's Angel Child in Toyland. This was written in 1915. I saw this in a bookstore. I had never heard of it before and never heard of the author or the pictures by Penny Ross, anything like that. But it looked interesting, and I read a page or two, and it's written in a style that is feels very modern, or there's nothing weird about the language, so it's very accessible. And so I got it, and I took it home, and I wanted to. I After the story was read, I went and looked um, the author and Penny Ross up, and interestingly, Penny Ross is the one who created this character, and he had a comic strip in newspapers, in a syndicated newspaper around the country, that was very popular, about this little girl Esther, and she usually gets herself into some trouble and learns some kind of moral from her shenanigans. But this was turned into this book, and it was written by somebody completely different. But Penny Ross, he did all the illustrations and drawings for this book, so it's a collaboration. Um, so I went ahead. I read this book. I started reading it as like a bedtime story, and I I was actually riveted by it. I couldn't wait to go to the next chapter because I thought it was very funny, very charming. But um, this this girl Esther, she what's funny about it is she, in this story, treats her toys terribly. So she's broken every toy. She takes things for granted. Her mother is exasperated by her disuse or her abuse of these toys. And so it starts out where she goes out into the rain with her toys and gets them all wet, and her mother and I think the maid, the like nanny, are upset and call her in. And so she goes back in, and it starts out in our reality, but you see, if you can see here, there's little faces and stuff. So she meets, when she goes out with her doll, she meets the rain witch out in her yard. But for the most part, like the story is still about a little girl and her imagination. But when she goes into the nursery, and I'm not going to go over the whole the whole plot. There's plenty to learn. But um, when she goes back into the nursery, it's where things start getting very strange, and that's when it goes into like complete fantasy land. It reminds me a lot of the style of Wizard of Oz, um, for something that to compare it to. Just that it has that accessible language. It's full of imagination, and we're starting to go into a different world. And so the story has Esther going into this world where it's a world of toys, and they all pretty much hate her because of how she treats them and how she has treated them. And I will say that there is so much snark in this book. So it's really kind of a pleasure to read it. But anyway, so I started to read this to my kids for bedtime, and I was really taken by it. And then something got distracted, so my kids, I don't know, they wanted me to read something else, and so I was like, okay, fine, I can do that. Um, on subsequent nights, they asked me to read something else that they were more interested in. So I did, but I wanted to finish reading this book. So I picked it up one day and I just started reading it for myself to see what would be coming up next. And then I when I went to read it, or later that evening, my kids then asked me, "Can you read what you were reading?" And so I did, and then they were completely sucked back into the story and really, really loved it. So, anyway, it is a good story. There is a good moral in it. I thought it was interesting because it didn't really pull any punches. It uses sophisticated words and language, but it's still a children's story, and it is just as much fun for the parents and adults to read. And it's filled with really, really beautiful artwork. The words to illustration ratio is very high. So, or there's just as many illustrations to the words. So it moves along at a nice clip. If you have a kid looking over your shoulder as you read it, they're usually pretty entertained by that as well. Just really beautiful, beautiful work. As you go along, so you can see that it didn't take, because it moves so quickly, it didn't take all that long to read. I don't know, maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And each chapter isn't that isn't that long. So you see here, like, chapter 1 just as a few pages, and then we go to chapter 4. Yeah, it's just a handful of pages every chapter, so it moves along at a pretty good clip. And like I said, it is entertaining to read. I maybe I thought it was funnier than even my kids did, but I thought it was a very clever little story, and there is a moral, and I thought it was really interesting too, because not only is there a moral, but she takes responsibility for her part, and changes her behavior later on. So I think it was a really good book overall in that way. It also, just because it's not preachy, it's more of us, the moral comes through a really interesting story with interesting characters, which is, I think, something we all look for or that resonates with. So, anyway, if you're interested, I do see these online at a pretty expensive clip, but you can find them a little bit cheaper. I found this at Half Price Books, I think, I think it was a little bit pricier for me, but maybe like $15-20, which for me is steep, but because it was so unique, I went ahead and got it. But um, it may be online as well. If you can find some kind of downloadable form or version of it, you can do that too. So anyway, hope you enjoy it, and see you next time.